Hi there, my name's Duncan. I'm from Learning Ideas Limited, and this video is part of a free resource I've released for high school teachers and students about the recording process. We've already had some videos that have shown you through the recording setup, what microphones are good to use in a high school environment, and the workflow. And now we're going to go on to mixing the band that we recorded. So the files for this are available for you to download and to have a go at mixing with, and you can use any piece of software. If you don't have any paid software, then you can even look at things like Soundtrap or Reaper, which is wonderful professional software, but it has a never-ending evaluation license, so you can use that basically for free, although I do encourage you to purchase it because it's a very, very cheap price. Or if you're using Ableton or other software that's popular, you can use any of that just by dragging and dropping it into your software. Now, I'm going to be using Logic here today, and so if you don't use Logic, or if you're not a Mac user, then I'm going to have to leave it up to you to figure out any differences between what I'm doing with my software today and what it might be in your software, such as Soundtrap or Ableton or Reaper. I can't show all the different pieces of software here in this video, it'll make it too long, but basically the principles of everything I do here you can do in any other piece of software, except maybe things like Soundtrap or GarageBand as free software, and I'll point out the differences when I get to those. So I'm going to grab these tracks that we had, I'm going to drag and drop them in. Now this folder of tracks is available for you to download. I'm going to bring in tracks 1 to 18. I'm going to leave this bottom one, this reference track, just for a little bit. We'll come back to that. So I drag and drop it into Logic here. Okay, now we can have a look at the tracks we have here. First of all, we have these drums, which are these tracks here. In fact, I'm going to color code them while I'm at it. That's my first little tip. It's really useful to go ahead and color code your tracks because it makes it a lot easier to find your way around. Now, we only have 18 tracks in a session. It's quite easily, some of these sessions could go up to 100 or so tracks once we do lots of overdubs and all sorts of other things we might do to it. So color coding and grouping your tracks is a really great way of organizing things. So I'm going to go and color code them and make them all red. I've got my bass, I'm going to make that yellow. We have our guitars here, our rhythm guitars. I'm going to highlight all those and make them maybe a light green. Here is a soloist guitar solo. I'm going to make it a darker green. A couple of backing vocals, let's make those purplish, and I'm going to make my lead vocals a pink. Okay, so straight away I can see all my tracks a whole lot easier now. The next I want to do is I want to group my tracks. Now this kind of organizational stuff seems quite boring when you want to just get into mixing, but it does make your job a whole lot easier. If you can take the time over to do this, it'll speed you up so much more in the latter part stages of the mix. So there are a few things I need to group together. First of all, I have these overhead tracks. Now these are the two tracks that come from the one stereo microphone we were using over the top of the drums to pick up the cymbals primarily, but also the whole drum kit. Once again, see the previous video where I show the recording setup to show what microphone we were using here. But this was a stereo microphone that basically has two microphones in one enclosure, and it outputs two signals. So because these signals are basically going to have the same processing to them later on in terms of the same volume settings and also the equalization, I'm going to group them into a track to make my life a little bit easier. So instead of seeing two tracks for the overheads, we're going to see one track. So if we can look at here now, I've just now gone and made these two tracks into one subfolder, which I can collapse and now only see one track. We can go even further than that. In fact, actually, before I do that, I'm going to do the same thing with a snare drum. We've got a snare top and a snare bottom, two microphones on the snare drum. I'm going to create a track stack for those, is what we call them in Logic. If you're in Ableton, you highlight them and go Command-G on Mac or Control-G on Windows to group them. So we have kick, snare, 3 toms. I'll leave those toms alone because they're going to have different processing. So all these drums now, I can put all of the drums now into one folder, which I can collapse or expand. So I'm just going to go ahead and do these with the drums, and I'll see you in a bit. Okay, we can see I've just gone and grouped all my drums into a track. I've also put all my guitars into a subgroup. Oh, sorry, I should say track, I should say a subgroup. Drums into a subgroup, guitars into a subgroup. I've left the solo guitar on its own because that's going to be processed a bit differently. And then we have our back-end vocals also in a group. So what was sort of 18 or 19 tracks before has now been grouped down to, what's that, 6 tracks. It's a lot easier to look at. Anyway, let's dig into the mix process. For now, I'm just going to expand all of these tracks so we can see everything we've got going on. And we're going to go and make our basic balance first of all. Now the first thing I might want to do is go ahead and just group maybe the drums within their group. I would usually always start with the lead vocal when it comes to the overall balance, but I'm going to go and group all the tracks which I have within a group. I'm going to go and balance those up first of all, so I can just have to use the one master fader after that. So I'm going to pop on my headphones for this process. I do encourage you for this whole mixing tutorial to use some headphones so you can hear clearly what's going on, particularly when we get to EQing. My headphones of choice are the Sennheiser HD650s. I've had these for a very long time. You can tell by the dents in them. They are amazing headphones. I swear by them. I think they're just absolutely wonderful. You can buy cheaper versions of the same headphone from Mass Drop. I think it's Drop now. I'll put a link down below as well. And you can get these for less than half the price off that. So if you're looking for a good pair of studio mixing headphones, I highly recommend the HD650s. Of course, there are many, many brands of amazing headphones out there, but these are what I've used for a long time and have come to trust, and I really do enjoy them. So let's have a look at these drums first of all. I'm going to solo my drum group. Let's go to a louder part of the song. Just to change my play from cycle, here we go. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is actually maybe just look at my snare drum. We can do the top snare drum. Okay, so it's my snare balanced. Listen to the overheads. First thing I'm going to do with my overheads is I'm going to pan them left and right. So the way around. So the overheads, by panning them left and right, makes the sound now go to outside of the middle of the image, because at the moment everything's coming right down the middle and it's going to clutter everything up. By using these pan controls, when we can move things left and right. The first thing I'll be doing is putting the overheads to there. But while I'm there, I'm going to go to my toms, and I'm also going to move those a little bit left and right as well. I'm doing it from the image of the way I look at the drum kit, not the way the drummer looks at the drum kit. So the high tom goes a little bit to my right as I look at it, and the medium tom a bit to the left, and the low tom far left. Okay, let's see, we've got the headphones, so the overhead dialed in. So I'm going to just bring these, I'm going to collapse the headphone track now, so the overhead track, I don't know why I keep saying headphone, the overhead track. The hi-hat, they can also actually go a little bit to my right. These toms I'm going to bring down a bit, and let's just find a little spot where the toms have been used. Alright, what about over the high tom over here? Okay, those drums are pretty okay for now. Let's go and collapse that folder so we can just see the one folder for drums. Now I'm going to go and look at my lead vocal. That's all pretty loud, so I'm just going to go and reduce the volume of all of the tracks apart from my lead vocal. Just listen to just the lead vocal for a moment, and then balance everything else up with that. Let's bring some drums Okay, we have these back-end vocal tracks as well. I'll turn those up. And because these back-end vocals have been recorded twice, I really like to pan one to the left and one to the right, and it'll create a nice wide sound. Okay, it's getting towards a pretty good balance. Now look at my guitar group. Now my guitars, to explain these, we look up here, we've got lead guitar ×2 and rhythm guitar ×2. Basically the lead guitarist is actually also playing a rhythm part for most of it. So you can consider these 4 rhythm guitars. So it was 2 players. Now what we did is we recorded each part twice. So if you ever listen to, first of all, this first lead guitar part, it sounds like this. we could have recorded a guitar just like that and left it like that, but instead, by having two guitars, it makes it sound a bit thicker, but then we can also pan them left and right, and all of a sudden, hopefully that's coming through in your headphones, the guitar image is now moved to the left and right and sounds nice and wide. And so by having a guitarist play everything twice, it means we've gone and got this nice thick sound. Now you can't get the same effect by recording it once and duplicating the track. That just makes it louder. It doesn't make it sound thicker. It's the slight inconsistencies in the player each time they record it that gives us a sense of width and fullness and texture. So because we actually had though two guitarists rather than just one guitarist in this band, I'm going to pan it slightly differently. So this guitarist, the guy who's played the first part, I'm going to have him far left for his top track and a little bit left for his other track, for his second take. And then the other rhythm guitarist, I'm going to have one of his takes go far right and his other take just a little bit right. And we get this kind of sound. So let's just go and balance these up a little bit now. First track. And the second take. Okay, so that's the guitars dialed in. And once again, if I collapse that folder, I can now just go and move all of the guitars with just one fader now.
Love song, and it feels like I've read you all wrong. Can't do this no more.
And finally, we want to just look at what's going on with the guitar solo. So let's go and make our tracks larger and find what the guitar solo is. Here we go. Now, because the guitar solo is the melody at this moment, it's replaced the vocals as the main melody, I'm not going to pan that left and right, I'm going to leave that right down in the middle. So we get this nice direct sound from the guitar. Now this guitar's a bit quiet, so even when I've gone and turned my volume for it up, it's still not quite loud enough. So what I will probably want to do is I want to make the gain of that track bigger. And in Logic, I can click on a track and go to the gain control over here to the left and just make it louder like that. That's one of the ways you can do it. There's a few ways. Now with that original audio source louder, I can now go and adjust the fader a little bit easier down in the mixer.
I don't want to write you a love song, and it feels like I've read you all wrong.
Just realised the guitar solo I have here is actually the older version of the solo. I did actually we re-recorded this guitar solo and it should be available in your files. So if the guitar sounds a little bit different here for the solo and what I'm doing in this video compared with what you've got, because we did re-record the solo and I just obviously haven't updated the files in this folder just yet. So to summarise, we've now balanced all of our tracks. So that involved firstly bringing the tracks in, it involved us color coding things to make them see where they're easier, just makes you see our tracks easier. It involved putting them into groups. So generally a drum group, a back-end vocal group, and the guitar group. And then I went and arranged the volume within those groups, and then the volume of the groups against each other. That also part of that was a process of panning. I panned the drums overheads left and right. If I just expand this folder, I panned the toms away from the center as well, and also the hi-hat. I left the kick drum and the snare drum down the middle. It's very important you don't pan those away. They need to stay down the middle because they provide the foundation and solidity of the track. I left the bass guitar down the middle. I won't pan that for the same reason as the kick drum. The guitars I did pan, so any chordal instruments like guitars or keyboards, very good to pan those left and right and make a balance of the mix, get them away from the middle, the center image. I panned the back end vocals left and right, and then I left the lead vocals down the middle. Okay, so that's a summary of what we'll do with the mixing. So if you've been watching this video and you've got these tracks, I encourage you to now get this far before moving on to the next video. Have a go at mixing it, see if you can create a little bit of a balance. One last thing though, there was a reference track I referred to before that I didn't import. This is going to be really useful for you to compare your mix and your balance with the final mix that we had. Now this track's going to be quite a bit louder, so I better take the volume of it down, and I'll just solo it for a moment.
Poems and songs about her hair. Thought I know you.
So that's obviously a final mix track that has compression and reverb and all sorts of other things on it, but it's really good for you to compare your balance, your volume faders with the mix in this reference track. So with it muted, I can just toggle it on and off by pushing the solo button.
How can you not see what we could be?
So compared to the reference mix, I can hear my lead vocal is a little bit quiet, so I'm just going to make that a little bit louder.
All of my dreams have long turned to stone in my mind.
And so on. Go through with all of the instruments and see if you can match the balance. The other reason why reference tracks are really good is because your ears get tired and you start to make bad decisions when your ears get tired. And it can only take 20 or 30 minutes before your ears will get tired and you can start making bad decisions. But by having a reference track there, you're just doing a direct comparison between the two to make sure your levels are about the same. This may seem like a way of cheating, or maybe, I don't know, if it just seems like if you're not good enough to do it by yourself, you've got to use a reference track. No, that's not the case at all. All professionals use reference tracks all of the time. They usually don't have, obviously, the finished mix like here to compare their rough mix to, but they do have finished mixes from other artists and other songs which are in a similar genre, which they import in, and they use that as a baseline reference before they get creative and craft their own mix. So to get your basic balance done, use a reference mix as much as possible.